interested in discussing here. Let's talk about the Superstar Shakeup. Superstar Shakeup happened this past week. Now, when I did my little shakeup predictions or hopes, I said Jinder Mahal to Raw with the U.S. title, Asuka to Raw, Asuka to SmackDown, and Drew McIntyre to Raw. And those were the ones I got right. The other ones, not so much. I was largely, I think pretty satisfied, especially as far as SmackDown goes with these moves, because when you really look at these rosters now, when you look at the makeup of these shows, SmackDown cleaned up. This was, to me, the polar opposite of what happened to SmackDown last year, where you had the shakeup and SmackDown's quality declined. Just every week, every month, it just seemed that SmackDown was far worse after the shakeup last year. And I think it's going to be the opposite now. I think this has strengthened SmackDown. I think this makes SmackDown of the two the must-see show. Now let's go down the list of moves here. Let's first talk about SmackDown to Raw. These are the people that have moved from the SmackDown Live roster to the Monday Night Raw roster. We have Bobby Roode, who is now on Raw. Jinder Mahal, who lost the United States Championship in his first night. Not only his first night, the first segment or two segments on the show, he came out and then he got put in a match with Jeff Hardy and he lost. So he is no longer the United States champion, but Jinder is on Raw. Baron Corbin is coming to Monday Night Raw. Get excited about that. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, as I mentioned, they are now on Raw. Dolph Ziggler is on Raw. And with him is Drew McIntyre. Now, Drew McIntyre, I had pitched last week that he should be moved to Raw, and he was, although I didn't expect him to be paired off with Dolph Ziggler. I'm going to give this time. I'm going to see where this goes. I certainly hope that they are not relegated to just being a tag team, although it seems that they are going to be a tag team. Maybe they'll just be singles, but they wrestle tag team matches, and they sort of are like a little posse and not just a tag team. I don't know. We have to wait and see. McIntyre just looks like a complete... you look at this guy, he just screams pro wrestler. This guy is he's in good shape. He's jacked. He's tall. He's got the long hair. It's everything that Vince McMahon should love in a professional wrestler. This guy is much better than being relegated to a tag team with someone, but it's a way to get him, I guess, back on TV. It looks like he'll be a heel. The both of them are going to be heels. And, look, for one night, they had a cool little finish they used on Titus Worldwide where they both hit their moves at the same time. Ziggler hit a zigzag at the same moment that McIntyre hit the Claymore kick, so that was cool. And for Ziggler, it's probably the best thing that could happen to him because on his own, the guy is just dead as a doornail. With McIntyre, who I think has a bright future on this show, it's someone for Ziggler to play off of. I don't know if he'll be like a bodyguard for Ziggler. I don't know if it's that kind of dynamic they're going for. But it's someone for Ziggler to play off of. It's someone who I think can help make Ziggler more relevant. Maybe Ziggler will start winning some matches, which is the only way to try to give the guy credibility, right? He's got to start to be a winner. People aren't going to back a loser. If all you do is lose, right? After a while, nobody cares. So this probably is better for Ziggler, I would say, than it is for McIntyre. McIntyre doesn't need Dolph. But I am interested to see where they go with this. It also means that all three members of 3MB are back on the same show, which is what I said would happen last week. I don't want to give you-know-who any ideas. Because to me, if Drew McIntyre doesn't wrestle for that Universal title at some point this year and have a program with Roman Reigns, these people are brain dead. They're brain dead. And maybe it doesn't happen this year. Maybe it's early next year or something. But in the near future, if this guy isn't challenging Reigns for the championship, they're brain dead. Breezango has moved from SmackDown to Raw. Breezango got a fluke win over the Bar on this show, and now we know why. Sheamus and Cesaro were doing the honors, leaving the territory, as they say. The Ascension is now on Raw, which means two things. Number one, it means that the Ascension can remain in all of the Fashion Police segments that they do. And it also would seem to me that if there are two guys who would be ripe to join Matt Hardy's Woken universe, the Ascension would fit right in there. So if you want to have them as sort of background comedy players as part of the Broken stuff and get them, put them in a real role on this show, make them part of that group, I think that would be the perfect place to use them, would be part of that Woken stuff. The Riot Squad is now on Raw. They attacked Sasha Banks and Bayley during their match last Monday, so we got no winner in the big Sasha Bayley showdown on TV. Natalya has moved from SmackDown to Raw, and she is apparently a babyface, at least for now. I don't suspect that's going to last very long. But they introduced her. She walked into a backstage segment where Ronda Rousey was being interviewed, and Natty walks in and they're hugging. Oh, they're like best friends. They're best friends. And later on, Natty beat Mandy Rose, got attacked by Mandy and Sonya Deville, and was saved by Ronda Rousey. Ronda came out, big reaction, made the big save for Natty. So right now, Natty and Ronda, I mean, they're tight, right? They're like best friends here. And that won't last very long. So it would seem to me that at some point they will build to a Natty Ronda match. And I think that's perfect. I actually think that's a great idea. Because Ronda needs a few people to beat before she gets a title shot or before she moves on up to somebody much bigger on the totem pole. She's got to beat a few people. This is the perfect role for Natalya, because Natalya really, I think, is somebody that you can use to help elevate other stars, Ronda being one of them. And it's a great role for her to be in, working with Ronda Rousey. And Natty's a great wrestler and has been doing this for a while. So it's not, it's good that Ronda will have somebody who's more than competent to work with, who can make her look good and make everything she does look like $1 million. They could do the turn at some point to get more sympathy on Ronda when Natty turns on her. So I think it's actually a great role, and it's an easy win. When the time comes, maybe on a pay-per-view in a couple of months or something. It's a great way, I think, to use Natty, and it's an easy win for Ronda. So it's a win for everybody. Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley are both on this show, so I don't know if they'll continue their feud. I can't really bring myself to care about it, but they are both on the same show again. Mike Kanellis, who at some point I would imagine will end up back on TV, but he is now on Raw after barely being on SmackDown. And the last move here, and this did not get a lot of play, and this was not something that happened on the show. This happened off the air, but I am very excited to see what they might do with this guy, and that is Chad Gable. Chad Gable has been split away from Shelton Benjamin. He is now on Monday Night Raw, which means he is now on the same brand with Kurt Angle, which means we can get some backstage, maybe comedy segments with Kurt and with Chad. And I said from the beginning that if they were going to do this stupid illegitimate son storyline, I would have went with Chad Gable over Jason Jordan. And Jordan made the most of it. It's a kind of a shame that he got hurt when he did, because Jordan was finally, it was clicking for him as a heel. Like, people genuinely, hated this guy. And he was having some really good matches, and he was working with people like Seth Rollins, and everything seemed to be going his way, and then he got hurt. And for his sake, I hope he can keep up that momentum when he comes back. But I would have gone with Chad Gable. I think of the two, that would have been more believable, because I do see a lot of similarities, even beyond the Olympic stuff, between Kurt Angle and Chad Gable. So A, I'm happy that the two of them are on the same show, and B, they can do something with Gable and Jordan. I don't know if maybe, you kind of put the two of them back together as a team for a limited time, or when Jordan comes back, if he goes right back into the singles hunt, maybe he can have some matches or a feud even with Chad Gable. But I definitely would not. I mean, that's sort of this loose end that was never tied up, and I would go back and do something there. The question is, how do they see Chad Gable, right? I mean, is Chad Gable going to be any better off on Raw than he was on SmackDown? Is he going to be worse? Is he going to be kind of lumped into the same category as people like Mojo Rawley and The Ascension and Breezango and Zack Ryder? I think that would be a huge mistake, because I think there's a lot of talent there. I think he's a very, there's a lot of personality there too, and a lot of humor. And I think that he could go very far if Vince McMahon and the powers that be see the kind of talent that this guy has. And I recognized it right away in NXT. Still one of the coolest things I ever saw was on that. It was in the Dusty Classic, the first one they did, when he was in there. I think who was he teaming with? I guess it was him and Jordan against, I think it was Corbin and Rhino. Go back and find that tag team match they had, because there's the one rolling German spot that he did with Corbin that impressed the hell out of me. The Chaos Theory, right? And Corbin's not a small dude. Gable is compared to Corbin, and he picked him up like he was nothing. And I still to this day love the finish to that match where, I don't even know how you describe it, but, Gable came off the ropes and was doing this whole tilt-a-whirl thing right into the end of days. It was this great finish. And when Gable came to SmackDown, I was hoping they would do something, maybe even a whole program with him and Corbin, because I think the whole big man, little man dynamic worked well between them. And we got like one match on TV, and I think it was a squash, and they never did anything again. Well, guess what? Gable and Corbin are both now back on the same brand. So you could still do something with the two of them if you really wanted to. So, please, I implore WWE, do something with Chad Gable. Don't waste this guy's potential, because I think he's got a lot of it. And to me, that's what the shakeup is all about, right? You shake things up, you bring up some people from NXT, and, you have people who maybe weren't getting opportunities here that now will get some opportunities. I'm not devastated by them breaking up him and Benjamin. They made for a good team, but it was a dead team. They weren't going anywhere, right? And when Benjamin came back, I thought one of the reasons they were looking for people like him, and they were going to bring back people maybe like Carlito or John Morrison, who didn't end up coming back, but they wanted to bring people like Benjamin back to work in some way with these newer stars and with some of the younger guys, and whether it was teaming with them or putting them over or whatever, and it was something for Gable to do, but I don't know that being in that tag team really helped him or did anything for him. So splitting them up and trying something new with him is something I'm not opposed to. Now, let me just mention about Raw last Monday on that show. Mickie James did the best sell job that I have ever seen in all my life for that Eclipse from Ember Moon. If you missed it, you got to go back and watch the end of that match. That needs to be in every Ember Moon highlight video for the rest of that woman's career. That was a great sell job on that move. The main event they slapped together was just a big 10-man tag. It was Braun Strowman, Bobby Roode, Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins, and Finn Balor beating The Miz, the Miz Taraj, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn. Braun Strowman was super over in this match. In fact, there was one point where Bobby Roode tagged in, and people sounded disappointed. They actually sounded dejected that it was Roode and not Strowman coming into the match, which to me doesn't speak well to Bobby Roode's future as a babyface. Hopefully that changes soon, because I still say he's miscast. But it does speak to them hopefully doing more with Braun Strowman. It's, maybe when people chant Strowman, Vince is back there thinking that they're actually chanting Roman. Maybe that's the problem here. I don't know. So that was Raw. Now these are the Raw to SmackDown moves in the Superstar Shakeup. We had the new U.S. champion, Jeff Hardy, moving from Raw to SmackDown. The Miz, who I mentioned a little while ago. Samoa Joe, which was the big surprise for me. I did not see Samoa Joe going from Raw to SmackDown, especially that they're building up something with Joe and Roman Reigns. So the last thing I would have expected was Joe to move. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville have moved as well. And by the way, I forgot to mention before, when I was talking about the Ronda Rousey and Natty stuff from Monday night, when Ronda came out to make the save, they actually had Sonya Deville go in there, and she was going to stand up to Ronda Rousey, and then Ronda gave her like a judo throw or something, and it looked cool. It got a great reaction. It was sort of like the MMA person against the would-be MMA person. I know she's had a few amateur fights, but I mean, this is what I said when they first started doing the MMA thing with Sonya Deville. I said, they've got Shayna Baszler on the way in, they've got Ronda Rousey who they're courting. It's like you're going to have plenty of legitimate mixed martial arts like stars and talent from that universe. I don't know that bodes well for this gimmick here for Sonya Deville. And so she got put on her ass on Monday night. But her and Mandy Rose are now on SmackDown, which makes sense because Paige is the GM for SmackDown, and Paige was with them in Absolution. And so why wouldn't she want them on Tuesday nights? We had a video package for Sanity moving to SmackDown without Nikki Cross. Eric Young, Killian Dane, and Alexander Wolf were the only ones featured in this video. There was no Nikki Cross to be found. Now, this does not mean for sure that Nikki Cross is not coming in with them. Maybe they're going to hold her off as a surprise, or maybe she's got other plans. Maybe they have other plans for her, and she's going to eventually be brought up separately and not as part of the Sanity faction. Just because they have a shakeup doesn't mean that you need to blow through all of your NXT call-ups and all of your big debuts in one fell swoop. I would like for them to save some debuts, and scatter them throughout the year. Why do you have to do them all in April? So that does not mean that Nikki Cross is not soon going to be on the main roster. But it doesn't look like she's going to be part of Sanity anymore. R-Truth is now on SmackDown, even though he thought he was on Raw. So he's still playing the goofball. Big Cass is back, and he is on SmackDown. Asuka was the other big name that was drafted over from Raw to SmackDown. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, Sheamus and Cesaro are on SmackDown, as is Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega, which I was very happy to see. Actually, that was the other one I had called. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville have moved as well. And by the way, I forgot to mention before, when I was talking about the Ronda Rousey and Natty stuff from Monday night, when Ronda came out to make the save, they actually had Sonya Deville go in there, and she was going to stand up to Ronda Rousey, and then Ronda gave her like a judo throw or something, and it looked cool. It got a great reaction. It was sort of like the MMA person against the would-be MMA person. I know she's had a few amateur fights, but I mean, this is what I said when they first started doing the MMA thing with Sonya Deville. I said, they've got Shayna Baszler on the way in. They've got Ronda Rousey, who they're courting. It's like you're going to have plenty of legitimate mixed martial arts like stars and talent from that universe. I don't know that bodes well for this gimmick here for Sonya Deville. And so she got put on her ass on Monday night. But her and Mandy Rose are now on SmackDown, which makes sense because Paige is the GM for SmackDown, and Paige was with them in Absolution. And so why wouldn't she want them on Tuesday nights? We had a video package for Sanity moving to SmackDown without Nikki Cross. Eric Young, Killian Dane, and Alexander Wolf were the only ones featured in this video. There was no Nikki Cross to be found. Now, this does not mean for sure that Nikki Cross is not coming in with them. Maybe they're going to hold her off as a surprise, or maybe she's got other plans. Maybe they have other plans for her, and she's going to eventually be brought up separately and not as part of the Sanity faction. Just because they have a shakeup doesn't mean that you need to blow through all of your NXT call-ups and all of your big debuts in one fell swoop. I would like for them to save some debuts, and scatter them throughout the year. Why do you have to do them all in April? So that does not mean that Nikki Cross is not soon going to be on the main roster. But it doesn't look like she's going to be part of Sanity anymore. R-Truth is now on SmackDown, even though he thought he was on Raw. So he's still playing the goofball. Big Cass is back, and he is on SmackDown. Asuka was the other big name that was drafted over from Raw to SmackDown. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, Sheamus and Cesaro are on SmackDown, as is Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega, which I was very happy to see. Actually, that was the other one I had called last week. And I was very happy to see them soon debuting on SmackDown. It's actually scary how many A-list programs are waiting in the wings for Daniel Bryan on this show now. AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Samoa Joe, The Miz, Cien Almas. So just to sum up the whole shakeup thing, I think both shows are in a position where they both have a lot of talent. Even Raw. I think SmackDown clearly won this shakeup, but I think Raw still has, Lesnar for whatever that's worth at this point as far as him having a few matches a year. If he even sticks around. We're not even sure that Lesnar is in it for the long haul. But they've got the Shield, all three members of the Shield still on the same brand, and certainly Rollins is super over right now. Finn Balor no longer has his club with him, but he's still on Raw. Bobby Lashley is on Raw. Bobby Roode is on Raw. Braun Strowman, a lot of B's on Raw. And so they've, and if you look at the women's division, Nia Jax obviously now the queen of that division, and they still have Alexa with Mickey. But they've got Ember Moon. They've got Ronda Rousey. Maybe that's why they didn't move Charlotte over, because I figured you don't want Charlotte and Asuka on the same show because you want to have that one big baby face, right, in the women's division. And so maybe they'll move Becky over with Charlotte, and they'll move Sasha and Bayley over to SmackDown, and they didn't do any of that. But maybe they just see it as, well, Nia Jax is a big baby face right now, and Ronda Rousey is a huge baby face, even if she's not on TV every single week. I think, the division, that division looks strong. I like the way that the SmackDown women's division is obviously, I think, on paper anyway, a lot stronger now. Tag teams, the tag team division, I think, on SmackDown looks stronger. And you look at that main event, you look at that top cluster of guys on SmackDown, and people talk about that whole SmackDown 6 period, right? So you had Benoit, and you had Eddie, and Angle, and all those people from 2002, 2003, right? Mysterio. Well, you look at the top of the card on SmackDown now, and I think that the SmackDown 5 or 6 or whatever you wanna call it is even stronger. It's in a position to be even stronger than that whole SmackDown 6 period and that whole SmackDown 6 cluster was back in '02. You know, you've got AJ, you've got Nakamura, you've got Joe, you've got Bryan. Miz coming over again, I think was the best move to make for him. You know, can Cass get over as a big star? I don't know about that. That remains to be seen. But they got a lot of talent on SmackDown right now. There's no doubt about it. John Cena still floating around as a free agent. Randy Orton, Jeff Hardy. You know, Orton hasn't exactly lit the world on fire for me, but maybe working with some new people like, Joe and a heel Nakamura, maybe that could be fun. So I am very optimistic about SmackDown moving forward. I could not have said that about the show a few weeks ago, but I definitely think they got the better end of it.